Oops. I forgot to pull that down. What's up, everybody? It is DSD and Dad Talk today. Duane, take us into the show, man.
Oh, hold on. Let me do this. All right, everybody. This is kind of a different one because we are simulcasting this on both my channel, DSD, and Eric's platforms. So some of you might be like, what in the world's going on? So that's my intro that I'm playing right now. I'll go ahead and turn that down. But hey, Eric and I are going to talk about some of our thoughts on this Johnny Depp Amber Heard verdict and what it all means, and hopefully get some of your guys' questions and kind of just dive into this. I'm really looking forward to this, Eric.
I am too, man. I still say this is one of the most important cases that has happened. And I think this is going to be really fun. We're going to get to hear from both communities. So, guys, you got questions, comments, put it down there. We'll be able to pull them up on both ends. But I guess as we're getting into this, Duane, and waiting on everybody, tell us a little bit about what you thought about this case. Did you follow it from the beginning, or where did you kind of come into it?
You know what, man? I cursorily watched it, I guess. Especially in the beginning, just because, well, one, day job. And the second part of it, man, is I don't know about you, but there was a lot of times that some of the testimony was really just getting on my nerves, man. I mean, it was like flashbacks to my own experience and the experience of other people I've talked to, that it just seemed, I mean, it was just tough. And and I'll say this, just starting out, and I don't know how other people thought about this. My first impression was, man, he's winning no matter what. Even if he loses this, he's going to win, right? I mean, he's like winning the court of public opinion. And then as time went on, I was looking at it going, oh man, what if he loses this? Then they're going to come back and the media's going to come back and say he was a liar and he did all this. And I was kind of getting nervous, and I was really starting, in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I hope he wins. I mean, from everything I saw, the clips, and, towards the end of it, I started watching it more. And I'm just like, man, this is, I mean, to me, it seems obvious that he would win. And I just wasn't sure. I mean, so I was on pins and needles when the verdict, I was able to sneak away in my car and listen and watch the verdict. And I was like, I mean, I was really kind of tense and stressed out about it, man.
I felt the same exact way. I think what helped Johnny, one, is those recordings were pretty damning on Amber Heard's side. I mean, to actually hear that, Johnny, go ahead and tell him I hit you. I didn't hit you. I punched you, and nobody's going to believe you. You're a man. I mean, she was taunting him. And if anybody's ever been in that relationship with a BPD, there was PTSD and flashbacks coming back from me, man.
Man, I'll tell you. So two parts, and hopefully I don't lose my thought on this. But the first thing is I was thinking that if she didn't have the audio of her being just horrible, because I mean, you look at it and when she was on the stand and she's, I mean, okay, we can all talk about the no tears and the overacting, but it's like, as I was watching this, I'm thinking, how in the hell can someone listen to the audio that happened a week ago or wherever it was, and then see this performance and I can only call it a performance because it seemed like it had zero credibility. And I'm just looking at it going, there's no way. I mean, and then I was thinking, if they didn't have the recording and all it was her on the stand, would he have been hosed? I mean, there was just such a, I mean, I'm sure you've seen on the news where the mainstream media is completely backing her, saying this is a travesty. She had a mountain of evidence. And I'm like, mountain of evidence? Did you watch any of this?
I literally saw one from CNN earlier saying that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard had tied. They both won the defamation case and was both found guilty. I was like, were you watching the same trial that I was watching?
I think I saw that clip, man. That was bizarre. I'm like, you're nuts. You're not watching the same thing.
And that's what the media does. I honestly think, since this case is over and this was a landmark case, you're going to see that rush to get that narrative back in there. It's going to happen. I was talking about it just a couple of weeks ago, right as that we was about to get that verdict, they started bringing the Bill Cosby situation back in. And, they're going to make that front page news. But guys, I mean, for the first time, you actually got to see a man on a stand, and people actually believed he was a victim of false allegations and abuse.
And the other, well, no, I was just gonna say the other thing about that is we also had a diagnosis from a mental health professional who was paid to evaluate Amber Heard, not Johnny Depp. And we can get into some of the nuances on that I thought were interesting. And that gave us a bona fide diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. And then on the flip side of that, we got to see those behaviors play out live in the courtroom.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was incredible.
Duane, really quick. I mean, if there's anybody in here that's watching from Dad Talk Today, one thing I'd like you to do before the end of this broadcast is go over to YouTube and make sure you like and subscribe over at DSD, Dad Surviving Divorce. Duane has some amazing material. So I'm going to get him to explain some of this to you. When you talk about that histrionic disorder or the bipolar disorder, what are some of the symptoms of that? And what are some of the signs that people could see in a relationship to know that might be who they're dealing with?
Well, first thing, let me just say, let me say this too. Whenever Eric, I appreciate you sending your people over to me. And if you guys don't, I'm most likely you guys watching me on my channel right now know who Eric is. But if not, go search for Dad Talk Today on YouTube and absolutely subscribe on that. The other thing I just want to say is I'm not a mental health professional, nor am I an attorney. I am basically a father who's been through this and developed tips and techniques that I've used through, to get my own life back, that I created this channel to help other people, both men and women. I'm not just a dad's channel, to navigate this, to basically try to recapture their life and try to mitigate the damage that this happens to the kids. And you said bipolar. It's not bipolar, it's borderline. And
I'm sorry.
That's part of the cluster B of the DSM-5, which you guys, anybody who watched the trial, you probably heard them talk about that. Bottom line is this is what I would say on that. And I'm very careful about talking about diagnosis stuff, because so many of us can get ourselves into trouble by saying, oh my God, I've looked at the information. I see that my ex is following the traits of narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, or antisocial personality disorder. I think is that what falls into the cluster B. Anyways, bottom line, it's patterns of behavior. I mean, if you're dealing with somebody who is just gaslighting you, making up stories, making you feel like you're living in the twilight zone, those are pretty good indicators that you're dealing with something wrong. And if you look at if you watch the trial and you saw that, then it's a little bit, pull that other one back up. What was that? I missed that one.
Yeah. Said, have a son with bipolar and other diagnosis, not something you wish on your worst enemy.
And bipolar falls in a different category, but here's the thing. These are serious issues and they seriously affect people, right? And the dangerous part is if you get into a relationship with somebody like this, and borderline's really tough, because they'll do the stuff like Amber was doing, where they'll make up false allegations and they'll just blow these stories up, and they have no empathy or regard for how this will affect somebody. And it gets to be really dangerous. Then you couple that with family law and family court, to where it encourages, the silver bullet and making up allegations. And it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, it's not a good thing.
It really is. And to see somebody, especially on such a big scale, that successfully fought off that silver bullet, I was with you, man. I didn't know if he was going to be able to pull that through, just because we know how hard it is to actually be able to prove yourself, even if you do have all the evidence. I saw what you was talking about. They had that interview where they was talking about the mountains of evidence and how this was a big setback for women and all that. Anybody that was watching that trial could tell that was some of the worst acting. How she ever got that role in Aquaman in the first place is beyond me. But I figured you'd like this one right here, Duane, because this is something that anybody that's been through these issues, if they see this comment, they're going to relate to it. And I know you will as well. Zachary Austin said, being laughed at is the hardest and most upsetting, when they break you down and just laugh at you. I believe in many ways that is what you saw happen. I know we were talking about Johnny Depp tonight. But I believe that is what happened in the Will Smith case. Now, some people think that was just stage theater or whatever. But what I saw last year was this Red Table Talk where he's finding out his wife had cheated on him with his son's best friend, like this young guy. He was completely emasculated in front of the whole world. And then by the time you saw that at the Oscars, Chris Rock was on the receiving end of it, you know, and they break down your manhood. They break down everything about you. And absolutely, this can be done on the other side to women as well. But it's meant as a form of control. If they make you, they mock everything about you, make you take away your confidence, then you will want to listen to them about everything.
Well, and then you start acting, you start acting a fool, basically. I mean, when you start systematically getting run down and beat down and you start questioning yourself and you don't even know what end is up or what is real, then you have a tendency you just start making mistakes, right? I mean, I think that's one of the bad things that happen with a lot of people that fall into this. And I sent you a comment. If you could try to pull it up.
Oh, absolutely.
Fall into this. And AK1 on my side, and guys, because of the way we're doing this, I have to manually pull this up. So if you guys ask questions on my side, I'll pop it into a slide. AK had asked, do normal people like us stand a chance of winning a defamation case against false allegations of domestic violence? Now, there's two parts to this. What I would say is defamation is going to be really tough. And one of the big things is you have to show damages as well, right? And Johnny was able to show that, hey, it was obvious that he lost his role, lost his career. I think for us, what it would entail is you would have to have some type of damage associated with it. Like you lost you got fired from your job or you'd have to demonstrate that there was some type of impact. Now, I think the other thing about this is, and what I've noticed, at least on my side, on my channel with my folks, is a lot of, how am I trying to say this? A lot of these temporary restraining orders and these false allegations, especially when people find the information of what they're dealing with, like through my channel. And I mean, there's a bunch of now there's a bunch of other channels as well. But when you start finding out what you're dealing with and you start learning techniques to deal with it, that is what is the game changer and allows you to prevail. Now, Johnny was able to systematically over the course of the 6 years from the time all this stuff happened to where he was able to go to trial. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Or can you pull that off?
Yeah.
And so he didn't make any additional mistakes. He was able to build a case, and then he was able to demonstrate what was really going on. And I think what I've noticed is that is starting to change. The problem is, and this is what I was worried a little bit about with Johnny's case, is when they started coming out with all his dirty laundry, so to speak. It's like, well, is this going to sway the jury and obviously it didn't sway the court of public opinion because everybody seemed to be on his side. But, that was, he basically had his behind publicly shown to everyone. Now, the difference is he owned up to it,
Absolutely.
I mean, he didn't say, God, man, how many times did Amber turn around and, oh, no, I didn't say that. Oh no, that was, they're that's their version of the story. That's not my version of the story. I mean, it's like she's called multiple times. She called people liars, and it appeared to me that he was just like, yeah, I did that,
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with the glass of wine, it had to be a mega pint. It's the way that they do it. Everything that you do is going to be times 10. Yeah, that's what they do to me. This is Topo Chico, not Heineken, mineral water. Geez. But any little thing they can use, anything they can use against you, Duane, they will. And that's, I think, some of the dangers also in relationships. I think, through trust and communication is where you find love. And when you're connecting with a partner, you're in a relationship, you give them intimate details about your life. What you're not understanding is if you're in a relationship with one of these that you might not know yet, a little bit later on, every bit of that will come back out at you. And they know the buttons to push. They really do know the buttons to push. And I know it sounds evil. It's evil. I mean, when you look back at this, I think one of the biggest impacts and things that stood out in this trial was the turd in the bed. I've heard a lot of things on the channel since I've been doing this, but I've never heard of somebody defecating in the bed, hoping for their partner to lay down in it. I'm sure it's happened before, but that was a first for me. I think you got to be a pretty out there individual to do something like that.
Well, and then the thing is like, own it. Right. I mean, it's like, I heard multiple different versions. One, it was like, oh, it was a horrible prank gone wrong, which that was stupid, but whatever. But then to turn around and keep saying, oh no, it was a little poodle dog. I mean, it's like, come on, I mean, it's like and this is the crazy part. This is what I think was so fascinating about this. And I hope was not inspiring is not the right word, but maybe gives people hope that a toxic ex, if you give them the opportunity, typically they will show their behind, and that's what she did, right? I mean, it was like everything. I mean, and it was, yeah. I mean, it was just like the problem is a lot of times I'll talk about it on my channel and I'll say, a toxic ex will sit there and they'll poke you, right? And we're freaking out. You're sitting there and you're like, oh my, your world's being ripped apart, your reputation, similar to Johnny's, they're going around telling everybody that you're abusive and you've done all these horrible things. I mean, I've lived through that myself. And you're sitting there going, oh my God, this is not who I am. And then your kids are being turned against you and you're fighting for custody and everybody is trying to tell you, oh, if you're the dad, you're going to lose. You're never going to get, you might as well just accept defeat right now. I mean, it's horrible. The lack of support that we have or that anyone has going through this, especially through the family court, because everyone is telling you that you're going to lose, that it's not going to win. You're going to lose. You're going to lose everything. They're going to get everything. You're going to just get knocked down in the dirt. And I mean, to see that, I mean, and obviously not everybody, not all of us have the resources that Johnny Depp had to pay the legal team and to do all the stuff that he did. But at least, we have a very public victory of somebody who said, no, this isn't true. This went too far. This destroyed my life. And instead of doing what all of us normally do, where we learn to grin and bear it and pick the pieces of our lives back up and start anew, I mean, at least he was able to kind of say, no, people do lie. People do fabricate stories. And no, you can't just believe somebody immediately without getting all the facts.
I'm with you, man. I really am with you. And, going back to this, I meant to comment on this with your question. Do normal people like us stand a chance of winning a defamation case? Defamation can be one of the hardest things to prove, but that's probably one of the most important things about this case. We know that somebody just did.
Yeah.
And he might have been a megastar or whatever, okay, with a mega pint, but somebody just did. And that is going to open doors. And I think it's really upon all of us to make sure that this conversation doesn't go away.
Well, and I think the other thing that people need the takeaway they need to take to apply to their own lives, if you are currently in a situation where you're dealing with the fact that you're not seeing your kids, maybe you have a temporary restraining order put against you. I mean, it sucks, but take a breath, be very deliberate about what you do next. And like I mentioned earlier, what I've seen a lot on the folks on my channel, Eric, I don't know if you have a different experience, but I have not heard too many people who've come to my channel saying, oh my God, I have a TRO and the hearing's coming up, where they come and they follow the roadmap to deal with this, where they don't come back and say, okay, yeah, it was dropped. I have not heard in the last 5 years someone come back to me and say, I had a TRO put against me and it stuck. I've had a lot of people come back saying, thank you so much for your information because it's helped me get through this. And now I have access to my kids. Maybe it's only 50-50. I have seen some people who've actually been able to do this and get full custody of their kids, the dads. I mean, so things are starting to change. So,
oh, it definitely is. It definitely is. And those are some of the best stories and messages you can get when you hear the good results that somebody's got that's been fighting this for so long. It's why we do it, man. It's why we do it. That's what we're looking for. I got some more of these comments up here, Duane. Matthew Huser said, there's been a lot of confusion between bipolar and borderline. I think Duane is discussing the cluster B diagnoses. Yes.
Yep.
What they tend to have in common is lack of empathy, lack of remorse, viewing people as objects too, and cognitive distortion. I think one of the ones that we saw also in this case that's not talked about enough, the fear of abandonment.
Oh, man. Yeah.
How many of you, when dealing, I don't know how many people have dealt with a situation in here with somebody that's like this, but they talk about that fear of abandonment. You abandoned me. It's there.
You know, it's, and I'm just trying to grab another comment on my side. So I'm just getting it set up. I'm not ready for it yet though. No, I mean, and I mean, just to roll back, I mean, and I can't remember who said that, but the person who mentioned the comment of them not having the empathy and stuff. See, you got to remember, Matt, and this great comment, Matt, is the thing is with that lack of empathy, because you don't have any empathy of what you're doing to the person, you don't have any remorse because you don't care. It has no effect, right? So when somebody is looking at what they're doing, I mean, I think everybody listening right now, more than likely, it would feel guilty about making up a story or even exaggerating a story, even taking things out of context to try to hurt the other person. You'd feel nasty about it, right? You'd have empathy for what you're doing for the other person and you'd have remorse for it. But since these people don't have that, they don't approach it the same way, right? For instance, I'll throw this out here to anybody who's currently watching right now. I think most of us, if we would have been in Amber Heard's situation, we would have never allowed this to go to trial, or we would have tried to settle, or we would have done something to make it go away, as opposed to basically flying this plane straight into the ground with the afterburners on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and trying to find some middle ground and make sense of a situation with somebody that's like this. I don't care how you change, how you communicate, what you do. You can have the best intentions. I'm just trying my best. I honestly feel like you're always going to keep coming up on the losing end. You know, one of the sad things about it is I wish there was a way to really get them help, but they have to go and help themselves. But most of the people that are going through this will never admit that they have a problem.
Oh, you mean the people who actually have the personality disorder traits?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. That's why it's like people who have narcissistic personality disorder, not that they're just narcissistic, but people who actually would be diagnosed with NPD are very rarely are, because they don't seek treatment. Unless they get in a situation to where they're evaluated, it typically doesn't come up. Now, borderline, on the other hand, and you see it, right? They go hot and cold. They have the abandonment issues. You know, 1 second they love you, the next second you're horrible. I've talked to a lot of professional therapists who say that they typically don't like or won't work with borderlines because they will, you know, you'll be the greatest person in the world as their therapist. And then whenever you don't provide them the right attention or something, they're turning you in, trying to get your license revoked. I mean, I do collaborations with Chris Godinez, and she was telling me about a situation where she had that problem where somebody who was following in that trait was trying to ruin her career. I mean, and look at it. Then you see on display Amber Heard trying to ruin Johnny Depp's career for her own personal gain without even any regard of how it would impact anyone.
Oh, definitely not. And that's what Daniel has said right here. He said, what scared me most was her absolute unwillingness to come clean. She wasn't going to, man. Even when she was caught red-handed, the biggest one of them all was she was going to donate the divorce settlement money to the ACLU.
Oh, God.
Oh, man, dude, I was watching that live, and I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now?
She pledged it.
Saying, I pledged it.
Of course, I pledged all the $7 million. I pledged it. Well, how much did you donate it? Well, I all of it. Oh, my God. I'm like, it's like, talk about the word effing salad. You know, I mean, and honestly, man, there was a lot of times when she was on, if I was watching it, or even if I was watching like a clip of it, I could only watch a little bit of it because I'm like, I know this person.
I do too.
I've had these conversations with people before.
Another thing, I don't know if you ever
Oh,
talked about this, Duane, and I know I'm not a psychologist and I'm none of this, but it's just something I've seen very common in people like this. If you watch Amber on the stand, I could not recreate this if I wanted to. Right before she goes to say one of these tall tales, her eyes will go 90 to
right
nothing.
to the well,
And
that
then when she's,
how about the constantly it's like,
oh, the
and,
jury.
oh yeah, this it's like, and then I grabbed a pencil and then I wrote something and it was really sad. What the I mean, come on. I know Johnny did look at the jury every once in a while, but it's like, come on, it's like, yeah. God, man, it just frustrates the crap out of me. This is
You
what I
did
will
that
say.
good.
Thanks. I appreciate that. That'll probably be a meme. Now I want to say this, right? I mean, because there are a handful of people who believe her, right? And this is what this is a take. I was thinking about this earlier, and this is the takeaway I have from this. And this goes for us, right? So if you are a person who is currently being victimized by this and false allegations or whatever, and you're thinking to yourself, nobody is believing me. Every time I try to say something, people look like I have a fifth arm growing out of my head. You have to pause. You have to pause and you have to take a moment and say, nobody is believing me. So my messaging is wrong. Right. And I mean, she couldn't do that. I mean, it's like, if you're doing something and everyone is saying, well, you're part of the problem, you're, this, that, and the other, then you got to take a pause and say, okay, you know what, for some reason, my performance is not working and people don't believe me. And I mean, I don't know if that makes sense or if anyone resonates with that, but I mean, you got to be really careful about that.
Oh, absolutely, man. And there was another comment. I know you got one too
Hey,
as
can you,
well.
yeah, let me get this set up. Okay,
And
pull this one up, would you? Or do
yeah,
I need to
guys, in
reshare
the
it?
meantime, no, no, no. Yes, actually.
Okay.
Guys, in the meantime, while Duane is doing that, if you got some questions or comments, we're on here to talk to you. So make sure to write those in. Here we go.
All right. So Sunny Days on my set asked a question, says, do you really believe Amber is done with Johnny Depp or JD? The answer is no. I mean, I think that
No.
if you guys were watching the fact that they're planning on appealing it, you look at her statement that she put out and the talking points that are being put out there. I do not think that she's planning on going down without a fight. So I think that, we all need to take a victory lap and enjoy this victory. But keep in mind the legal system has a process and she has some opportunities to appeal it. I mean, I hope that it's all shot down, but no, I don't think this is done. I mean, the fact that she came out and is still saying that she in her statement 4 minutes after it was over, barely walked out the door of the courthouse, she's saying that she's still a victim and this is terrible for all real victims. I mean, it's horrible.
Oh, yeah. And if you even look at her statement that she did following that, she made sure to put this is like a loss for violence against women across the world. This is all tied to that Violence Against Women Act, the VAWA that Joe Biden did years ago. It's 30 years old. I don't know if you know this, Duane. It just got reauthorized inside of a $1.5 trillion spending bill. This is where all these DV centers and stuff. Not long ago, I don't know if I talked to you about this or not, but Ron DeSantis down there in Florida actually started digging into this. There was a DV organization down there that was getting millions of dollars in funding. I think it was year before last, from what I was told. They got the executive director got 275 days of vacation time. Last year, they got 400 days of vacation time in a year. Now, what's wrong with that scenario? They found out that it was a scam, and they completely shut it down and got that money back. But that is just because they were searching into it right there. How many of these are all across the country right now? There is.
Exactly.
We talk about the murder of John Mast. Chad Reed was killed. Justin Goolsby, over the past year, one of the big things that happened over on Dad Talk was the amount of parents that were getting killed at custody exchanges. And guys, It is moms and dads. If you search that up, the conflict from family court has spilled out onto the street and they can't even pick up and drop off their kids without fear of stuff like this going on. Well, there's custody exchange centers. There's almost 800 in the country right now. And most of them are funded through VAWA. How many of you knew about it? They don't tell you about that. I think it's just all an act, you know, it was like she was making sure it was in that statement. And that was one of the things that caught my eye when I was reading that. But,
Yeah. Hey, pull up this one.
okay.
I just sent over there. So Steep Turn says, DSD, our question, in your opinion, how much of this verdict is simply Hollywood, and how much will this verdict have a lasting impact on the men are trash movement? I think this is going to have an impact. Obviously, we're not all Johnny Depps, but I mean, this really, what this does is now if you're sitting there talking to somebody, and this is the problem I think a lot of us have had in the past, is people who haven't experienced this don't understand because they don't think that someone is going to alienate their kid. I mean, who is going to deprive their child of a relationship with their other parent, mom or dad? Nobody, right? So whenever we start saying parental alienation and false allegations, people are like, yeah, whatever. Now you have an opportunity to reference this trial. I mean, like, this is what I mean, some of the coaching people I've dealt with, when they would ask questions, I would use some of the stuff from the trial to say, in the last 6 weeks, look at, you saw this, right? You see the pattern of behavior, you see what she's doing and what she's willing to do. How is this different than what your person, your ex is doing? And they're like, oh my God, you're right. Right. I mean, so I think the benefit of this is going to have, I mean, there's still going to be the men are trash movement. I mean, that's not going to change. But what this does is this opens the door, or, cracks open the door for all the people who have no experience with this, right? Because typically what we end up with is we end up talking in a almost an echo chamber of other parents or other men for this scenario that are going through it. And maybe the cursory other relationships, like, so maybe it's the new girlfriends, or maybe it's the, somebody's, their adult child is going through this. And that's how they know about it, because they're being personally impacted. This basically shined a light that everybody, I mean, the whole world was captivated by this. So I think this is going to have a lasting impact that's going to be beneficial to people who are victims of false allegations and smear campaigns.
So I got a 2-part answer to that. I've had lots of people that when we was talking about it, they was like, he's a celebrity. He had the money to fight this. What has this got to do with me? This is going to do absolutely nothing for my case. Well, with that, maybe it won't. But I'm going to tell you, for the first time, there is people that have been talking about this for decades, guys. And you never see it on the screen. For the first time ever on screen, the whole world was tuned into this. And it's about using this to your advantage. Now you have a conversation starter with somebody.
Exactly.
If for somebody that you talked to before, like you said, Duane, if they don't know what you're going through, most of the time they're never going to be able to get it, but they'll know how to talk to you about the Johnny Depp case. Oh, is that what it was? You know what I mean? And you can use that with your legislation. You can use it with so many different people. So it was a huge, huge, huge win. And I don't think it needs to be discounted. It really doesn't.
Oh, I mean, this is a big thing, right? I mean, this is a watershed moment. I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning, at the top of the show, I mean, okay. Everybody at the beginning of this, if any of you guys watch any of the lawyer, especially the YouTube channels, the ones that were really, actually watching it, unlike what's happened on CNN, where I've seen on some shows where it's like, it's readily apparent that these people did not watch the show because they're just getting the facts wrong. But when you watch the legal analysts from actual lawyers, they all said in the beginning that, man, this is a long shot. The likelihood that Johnny's going to win this is like, close to 0%. And then as the trial kept going on, you'd see some of those people say, I was thinking there was no chance, but I'm starting to think that he might win one. I remember, I don't know if you saw any of that, but I remember seeing a few different, clips where people were like, he might win one and get no money, right? He might win one, one little segment, and maybe that'll be it. And it's just, I think a lot of people, if you were able to watch some of the reactions, I loved your reaction, dude. That was amazing. When the verdict was read, a lot of people, I was watching Emily B. Baker. She had a really good channel on this. And she, I mean, she's an attorney who is actually, she was an attorney who was like a clerk during the O.J. Simpson trial back in the day. So she was in L.A. In the DA's office. And when they were reading the verdict, she was just like, oh my God, he won the first one. Oh my God, he might win all three of them, I mean, so this was really a bizarre moment. But the reason is because she effing lied and drove that into the ground. And I was thinking about this. If she wouldn't have countersued him and she would have never went on the stand and did the stupid looky thing and my dog stepped on a bee crap and all that dumb stuff, she probably would have won. I mean, I think this was hers to win. And I think because of her decisions, not her attorneys, I think it's what she did is why it blew up in her face. Thank God.
Oh yeah. No matter how good of a legal team she would have had with what she was saying on the stand, I mean, people can understand. And so, there's been a lot of people, Johnny's not innocent. He had a lot of dirty laundry. And I know you was talking about that earlier. Johnny owned it. Johnny didn't try to go away from it. Some of the details that he was saying, it wasn't flattering. And that's got to be hard for the whole world to be seeing your dirty laundry. But he owned it. And I think people respected that about him. I really do. She couldn't own anything. There was always an excuse for everything. Then you find out about the makeup that she supposedly wore in the makeup company.
God,
comes back and says, we wasn't even making the makeup there.
That was, the Amica cream. I'm like, and then the company comes out and says, hey, by the way, we didn't make that. That wasn't even a product when we did it. That is an absolute lie. I mean, and that wasn't even, I don't even think that was put in front of the jury. I mean, but it's just like, it was so over the top.
Absolutely. I'm going to get back to some more of these. Mr. Colin David said, normal people go into court unaware of mental illness. Normal people don't realize they are going into court with PTSD from abuse. They are, in fact, disassembled going into court. And that's the main reason why male victims struggle. We no longer recognize true self. I think, Melissa Isaac said it best. Emotions win cases from women and lose cases for men. And a lot of times once you go in there and you've got all that suppressed up, but it didn't work for Amber. She was trying to put on the emotions because she knew that most of the time it would be effective, but there was no tears. But most of the time it does work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and what I'll just to dovetail on what Colin was saying is, I think, and I just screwed his name up because I always do that, so I apologize, man. Now that I'm looking at it. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, I think so many of us, when we're at the beginning of this, we feel like we're living in the twilight zone. We don't trust ourselves. I remember having a conversation with my friends where I'm like, okay, my decision maker is completely flawed. I don't even know what's real anymore. So I'm going to defer to, I had a couple of core group of friends and I'm like, okay, I'm going to base my decisions, my life decisions on what you're telling me to do, because I don't know what ends up anymore, and then when you're in that mode, you start making mistakes. And when somebody is, poking you in the eye and trying to get you to make mistakes and trying to get you frazzled and trying to get you dysregulated, then you end up then you end up acting a way that they're trying to set you up as, right? I often say it's like, they've written the story and we inadvertently start reading from their script. Yep. And when you do that and they're like, oh, see how they do this, this, and this, and there you go. Right. I mean, it just starts demonstrating it.
It's part of the gaslighting, hoping you're going to follow the trail.
Yeah. And really and the sad reality, Eric, is most of us do in the beginning. And I mean, I made a ton of mistakes, right? When I was going through my divorce and custody battle, I didn't have your channel. I didn't have, my channel. When I was looking for resources, I couldn't find any. All I would find is people that would say, you're going to lose everything. Just expect to be living in a, if you're lucky, you'll get a Sears Kenmore Elite, cardboard box to live in. I mean, it was just incredibly depressing and it made it really tough. And I made a lot of mistakes and I had to undo those mistakes. And every time any of us going through this, when we make a mistake, it makes it harder to basically pull out of it.
It does, because they want to get you upset. And as soon as they get you in that emotional state that they want, the snapshot's going to happen. And that's going to be, this is who they are. It's what they do.
Well,
right?
how about, I mean, dude, that effing TMZ video, right? I mean, that was great testimony. If you guys saw that, where they brought in, I mean, and they didn't
Yes.
get the TMZ guy to say that, you know, we got this video for Amber Heard. It's like, hey, when you get a video, how long, you know, what do you have to do? It says, well, if we get a video and it's from the copyright holder, meaning the person who created it, we can post it in 15 minutes. And if we don't, then we have to, it takes, you know, it can take a few days or whatever. And it's like, okay, Mr. whatever his name was, I can't remember it. You know, how long did it take you guys from the time you received that video for you to be able to post it and retain and basically take the ownership of that video? 15 minutes. You know, I mean, it's like, and my point on that is I don't know how everyone else felt about that. When I saw that video and you could see her, you know, kind of hiding the camera and everything, it's like, man, that just felt off. I mean, way back when that first came out, I'm like, that seems weird. You know, that just doesn't seem, you know what I mean? It seemed off, you know?
Is that the same guy? He was one of my favorite testimonies or witnesses, because they
5
said,
minutes or 15 minutes of
yeah,
fame?
they asked him about his 15 minutes of fame, and he's like, I could say the same thing about you taking a case from Amber Heard. And because you know what? Everybody knows he's true, because they didn't have a great person to be taken up for at that point in time. So,
well, you know what, man, here's the other thing. And this is what I was thinking about, like when the trial, I mean, not when before this happened, but back in the day when this was going on, and it was like, you know, she's coming out saying, you know, he sexually, I mean, I guess we're going to just get demonetized, but whatever. But I mean, you know, you got the SV and it's like, okay, so like, okay, Harvey Weinstein, right? When he came out and the first person came out and said, hey, this happened to me. Did you have, what did we have? We had person after person, or woman after woman after woman coming out saying, yes, that happened to me, right? And me, which hence me too, right? So, absolutely. But in this situation, you had nobody coming out saying, yes, Johnny did that to me too. You had past relationships, long-term relationships saying, no, that is not the person I knew. I mean, nobody was coming out saying that had, you know, that me too. Nobody was saying me too with Johnny. And I was waiting for it. I'm like, oh man, this sucks. Cause you know, I kind of like the guy. He had a good career. He was a, you know, I mean, I grew up with him in 21 Jump Street, watching that back in the day.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. I forgot about that one. I didn't realize he was in that until recently, but, you know what my point is I was like, I mean, like, okay, so I mean, I didn't Weinstein, whatever, but like Cosby, I mean, that was tragic, man. How many of us grew up with Bill Cosby, the Cosby Show? And here you find out that, you know, this guy is basically a turd, you know? And then it was like, when the whole thing started with Johnny, it was like, oh man, really? Another one? You know? And that's the thing. I mean, he got destroyed, his career destroyed. Absolutely. Because everybody immediately believed him. You know, I mean,
because that's what they're told to do. You know, that's how it's been for so long. And that's, you know, again, why are we celebrating this? Because for the first time, it didn't work, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I get it, man. I mean, I'm old enough to know, I mean, I can remember a time where when a woman came out and said, you know, hey, this happened to me, you know, it would be the, you know, oh, hey, sugar plum, don't, you know, oh, you're just blowing it out, or the people blaming, I mean, the victim shaming and stuff like that. I mean, so there's a part of this that's important that people need to be able to say, hey, this happened to me and it's wrong. But the problem with it and what we're starting to see is whenever people are like, oh, well, everyone's going to believe me, so I'm going to just make this up and torpedo the other person for my own benefit. I mean, that's what she did. I mean, threw this out here right when her movie was launching to try to basically, like, you know, get everyone to want to support her, you know, want to go out and say, yeah, you know what, maybe she's not the best actress in the world, but you know, she went through a lot and that's not right. So we're all going to support her. And it's like, I mean, it's freaking evil. It's evil.
And so I think sometimes people think, you know, when we talk about how this was kind of a win for men, They think that we might be creating that men versus women scenario. What's really happening right here is we're on the same side. When you have these people that make these false allegations, these silver bullets, and like Amber Heard now, she's been completely outed. She took away the voice from real victims. It starts becoming the person that cried wolf, and people aren't so quick to believe it anymore. Now, there might be a case where they say, hey, something is going on. One that rings to mind is the Justina Valva case. And that one still hasn't been put to trial yet either, where the mom told him, said, hey, their dad's being abusive. He's alienating. And they didn't listen to her. Well, he ended up starving the child, and the child died. This was up in New York, but she had told him the whole time. I think there comes this time where it starts, like I said, taking away the voice from real victims, where it's taking away the voice from parents that are trying, from people that are trying. It's all on the same side, and we got to come through and make sure that we're doing this together and don't get caught up in that scenario. It's easy to do sometimes. I definitely understand that. I got a good question. Go ahead, man.
Well, before we do that, I just want to dovetail and say this, just to kind of say, to reiterate what you're saying, is like I mentioned earlier, my channel is not, my demographic is 50-50 of men to women. And I have moms who are members of the channel and subscribers who I've talked with and worked with on my Discord and stuff, who are dealing with false allegations, who have had their ex-husbands make up stories, do the CPS thing, basically do almost the silver bullet against them. And the problem is, or the reality is that if somebody is willing to, has no empathy and no remorse, and is willing to lie or exaggerate stories for their own personal gain, unfortunately the family law system encourages that and rewards that. Not the entire time, but I mean, when it first starts, I mean, so both, I mean, this is a victory for everyone, both moms and dads who are targets of this, because it's shining a light on the fact that people do freaking lie. And the last thing I just want to say is there were certain things that Amber was talking about, like even some of the, like when she was giving the graphic story of what he did to her with the bottle. And I'm like, there's a possibility that maybe that scenario happened, but not in that way. Right? Like maybe they had consensual thing, maybe not, I don't know. But I mean, it's like, these people will take things out of context and exaggerate things. Now, I think for Amber, a lot of people said she was stealing stories from other people. Like other people had told her stories of what happened to them, and she just took them and said, well, that happened to me. I mean, so we're dealing with somebody who's a little bit more off, if you know what I mean.
Some people might not like it when I say this, but I think the same thing happened with Bill Cosby. All those people came forward. I mean, he admitted to sleeping with many of them, and he even admitted to taking drugs with some of them, but he said, it was consensual. For them to wait all that time, and Bill Cosby was going around the country at that point in time doing some really big conferences, and he had kind of been off the scenes for a while. And once he started doing that, all of a sudden 60 people show up. I mean, it was that Me Too, guys. But I do believe, like I said, it might have been a little bit of a different story. Watching that testimony about the bottle, it gave me the creeps, man.
It didn't seem it. I mean, it seemed like, I mean, I hate to say this, it seemed like a performance. It's like, I mean, how can you go and you can be like, I mean, it's almost like, oh, this happened and blah, 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 blah. Okay, cut. Oh, all right. Let me have my drink. I mean, it was like, you don't have that emotional destruction and then come back from it in an instant. Now, granted, I didn't watch that part live, so I mean, I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but man, the parts I saw, I'm like, it seems like somebody is, well, I mean, like I was joking with earlier, kind of doing the, the side look, the looking at the jury. It's like, I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's how somebody who really did it or who really experienced that would react. Right? No. Would you agree with me on that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I kind of want you to answer this. We're going to start getting to some of you guys' questions and comments. And I hope I say this name right. Mark Razik Hilmy. He said, how does a guy like myself prove she's lying? And of course, we said we're not attorneys or experts or anything like that. But what are some tips and tricks, Duane, that you think Mark here could use in this situation?
Mark, I'm sorry you're going through this. And this is what I'll tell you, man. What you have to do on this is consistently demonstrate through your own actions that you're not the person that they're saying you are. Now, if she's saying you did, things behind closed doors or whatever, even then, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the specifics. And this is the way I dealt with it on mine, right? I mean, I had people who would say, well, you're this. And I said, okay, well, am I demonstrating that? Is that how I'm acting? I mean, if I was this woman hating, angry, abusive person, would I be calm? Right. Wouldn't I be exhibiting these different behaviors? And you have to basically just let people see through your own actions that it's not true. Now, the problem with this, Mark, and the hard part about this is, what are the specifics, right? I mean, if she's saying that you, 3 years ago, you used to beat her and lock her in a room. Well, how do you deal with that? If she's saying that Mark doesn't care about the kids, he's just a Disneyland dad, and then and I've had to deal with that, right? And you just basically start showing up, you start demonstrating that you're not that person, and people will start to see it. And I've had success with that with the school teachers and mainly with the teachers and even with therapists. I mean, when I started this, my kids, especially my oldest, didn't want to live with me, didn't like me, had an estranged relationship with me. They were wanting to put them on medication. The teachers thought that I was the one creating all the problems, and just methodically showing up and not being that person and letting her basically, kind of like what Amber did, put her butt out there and show who she is. That's how you do that, Mark. I don't know if you have some more specifics, we can try to dive into it, but I mean, it's kind of tough because that's a broad comment.
It is. And, that brings me into the next comment I'm about to pull up. And Duane, I don't know if you talked about this on your channel or if you're aware. I was just on the phone yesterday with Dr. Jennifer Harmon, and she was telling me, like, we've got to be all hands on deck. And we got to start raising the conversation about Caden's Law that is coming out. Colin David said, this case is proved without a doubt that a forensic psychologist can prove valuable information with such mental health disorders from and of a dysfunctional partner. So with Caden's Law, this is something they're trying to attach with VAWA. There was a case where one of the fathers actually killed the daughter, but he had one custody. They're now taking this one case, and they're trying to pass this law in several different states, which says you will no longer be able to claim parental alienation, and you will no longer be able to use a mental health expert or a psychologist in your case.
Oh, no.
Very dangerous. It basically says if she makes an allegation, it's believed. That is one of the most dangerous things I've ever heard of. And it's going on right now, guys. I know she mentioned New York, California, and there was one other state. I can't remember, but they're actively trying to get that going. And I know they just attached that in that $1 trillion spending bill with VAWA. So they got a very big arsenal to make sure that goes through. That is scary. It is very scary.
Yeah, that's tough. And one thing I'll say, fortunately, Johnny was able to get who was the therapist? I know you probably got the name on the tip of your tongue.
Shannon Curry.
Yeah, Shannon Curry, Dr. Curry. That was phenomenal to be able to get that in there. Most of us do not have the opportunity or the money to pay for a professional to get that evaluation. So we end up having to focus on patterns of behavior, right? When you're trying to fight custody and you're trying to bring up concerns, right? Very rarely do we get a diagnosis. And the thing I wanted to mention on that, because that I thought was unique, is Johnny was not evaluated. Amber was. And the reason Amber was evaluated is because she claimed that she had post-traumatic stress disorder. She's like, this stuff happened because I responded certain ways because I have PTSD, which is a bona fide mental health issue. Johnny never brought up any of his mental health issues. So his team said, hey, okay, fine. She's saying she has PTSD. We want to have her evaluated by our expert to determine the validity of PTSD. That's how that Dr. Curry was able to basically, or was allowed to do the diagnosis. Now, the other thing I just want to cover or hit on this that's really important for most of us, only a mental health professional in a clinical environment can diagnose somebody with a mental health disorder. So that's why when you had Amber's mental health professional trying to diagnose Johnny, saying, oh, he has NPD, it was basically shot down because he was not evaluating Johnny in a clinical environment, whereas Dr. Curry evaluated Amber in a clinical environment. Now, the reason this is important is when you go, if we go around and say, my ex is a borderline, has borderline personality disorder, you're getting yourselves into a dangerous area, because you are not a mental health professional. You are not, doing it in a clinical environment, and to throw that around hurts your credibility. We end up having to focus on patterns of behavior. We figure it out, right? And understand what you're dealing with. And you could say to yourself, and maybe, and I wouldn't even say it to very many people, because you don't want anyone to say that you're doing that. Learn what the behaviors are and focus on that. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. Well, that goes back to the comment. I took a little slack for it not too long ago, where I said all the social media experts have diagnosed everybody with narcissism. Because in every relationship now, you hear both sides calling each other narcissist, and it's become that buzzword. It's really kind of devalued the seriousness of dealing with narcissism.
It's really frustrating.
It was not devaluing what people are going through, but it has become such a popular term, and people trying to diagnose their partners.
Yeah.
Duane hit the nail on the head, and we've talked to some of the best attorneys and experts out there. Focus on the patterns of behavior. That's where you're going to get the most effectiveness. But a couple of thoughts back on when we're talking about the psychologist. Okay. There's two sides of that. Shannon Curry did an amazing job. If you can find an expert, sometimes they can be one of the best things to happen on your case. The other side, you got some of these bloodsuckers in the community that will charge you tens of thousands of dollars, and they don't do anything for your dang case. And when they don't get results, they'll tell you, you need another one, then you need another one, then you need another one. And they'll do that until they know that bank account is completely dried up. You saw both sides on that case. You saw Shannon Curry, but did you see Amber's psychologist that was diagnosing Johnny?
Oh my God. Well, there was two. There was the one lady who just was horrible to watch. And then the guy with the weird tongue thing that was just bizarre.
And he did that when they asked him about Willy Wonka. You didn't see him do that?
I did. It was just bizarre. I'm like, what the?
It was crazy, man. It was crazy. And I mean, how that even happened in the first place, but she had mountains of evidence, right? She did everything right. Anybody that would have hired that guy, I would completely call your validity into question.
That was,
Duane, do you have any more questions from your audience over there on that side? I'll bring this one right up here while you're checking that from Cindy Slavens. She said, and what is their end game? Don't understand that part. They beat you down, try to suck the life out of you, and walk away. Well, that's it. They want to completely take away your confidence, take away anything you think about it, because then you depend on them for everything. They've got you doubting everything, and you're not going to fight back as much. I say when it comes to alienation in a lot of these cases, one of the red flags is watch out if you get in a relationship early on and they start trying to take you away from your friends, from your family. Yeah. They try to distance you from other people because they don't want anybody inside of that circle that can talk sense into you. And if they will take you away from your friends and your family and try to isolate you like that, they will definitely isolate you from your kids.
Absolutely. The other thing I would say on this with Cindy's question on that, here's the underlying, I think the underlying issue with especially the personality disorders is they generally manifest from childhood trauma. And what ends up happening is these people can't look at themselves. So if things are calm or things are quiet, I mean, like most of us would be like, God, can't we just stop with the chaos? Because we want our lives we want peace in our lives. But people like this, people like Amber, do not, in my opinion, they can't handle the quiet because then they have to think about their own lives. They have to think about their own adequacies. They have to think about their own fears. And as a result of that, they always have to have chaos, and chaos makes them feel comfortable because it gives them something for their mind to focus on. And the end game on the other thing, and I think what really stems from this is when somebody like this realizes they've lost somebody, and that person has the ability to to expose them to the world, they try to destroy them so that their credibility is gone, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how many people up to the point that this trial happened were saying, Johnny, you need to let it go. I can't, you know, I mean, these people just need to stop. They're both being stupid. This is silly. And, you know, trying to basically saying that, you know, hey, both of you guys are stupid and you need to knock it out, knock it off. And what they do is they run those smear campaigns so that no one believes you. And then you get someone else saying, man, you just need to move on. You know, like if Eric and I were talking offline and he was telling me about his stuff, I mean, the normal non-supportive response would be like, Eric, it's been 3 to 5 years, man. You got to just let it go. You know, you just got, I mean, that is so freaking hurtful for somebody who's been through this.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I saw a lot of it inside of our own community, just saying that, you know, this case was a farce. It was covering up the, what's her name, Ghislaine trial, and that there was no importance to it whatsoever. And I'm just sitting back like, man, you don't get it. I mean, if this just opened the door for defamation cases, because let's be honest, it's one thing when you're going through false allegations and you've got to fight that off, because even if you can get exonerated or you can fight it, that stigma is going to follow you for the rest of your life. But the other side of that is the person that created that stigma, that did this to you, there's no consequence. There's no consequence. Yep. And people don't even try defamation trials with parental alienation and false allegations because they say it's so hard to prove. That needs to change. That needs to change. And even like you was talking about, it's not about the money. I know a lot of people was focusing on the money as much as it was the importance of fighting that off. So that was definitely a win for us. And I'm glad. My hope is that Johnny doesn't just ride off into the sunset, because he could be a major voice in this right now.
I know. I think we were talking about that offline, that, I mean, I completely understand. I mean, if he decides, you know what, I won, my name's been cleared, I can move on with my life. I get it. I mean, I get it if that's what he decides to do. And, you know, probably that's the route he's going to go. But I agree with you, Eric. I hope that he does not. I hope that he lends his voice to this and keeps shining a light on it, to be honest.
It does, man. I mean, if you get a voice, one of the hardest things with this movement is we don't have anybody that draws a crowd. You know, I think it's been hard for us to organize, because if you're going through these battles, most of the time you're at work. You're a slave to work and a slave to paying these bills, the child support, the alimony, or whatever. And so it's hard for guys to come together and organize. But this could be the voice that could bring the people together.
You know, I just want to dovetail on that, because I remember that. I remember when this first thing started and the temporary orders were put out and the custody was, you know, 70-30. And I mean, I'm going to work every day. I'm trying to slay dragons at work. All my money was going to the ex. And I felt like here I am jumping through, you know, flaming hoops everywhere. I have my attorney having me jump through flaming hoops, work's having me jump through flaming, my kids, everybody. And I'm looking on the other side and it's like, oh my God, this person is basically retired, you know, getting a check from me and has all day to just plan ways to make my life harder. And it was, I mean, and I feel for everybody who's going through this, who's just in the beginning part of it, you know, just in shock about what they're experiencing. Cause I don't think anyone really believes this is true. I didn't. I mean, when I started this whole thing, I'm like, I was married to this person for 20. I mean, I know Johnny's case where they were married for less, like right around a year. I mean, they dated for a little while, but I mean, I could not believe that somebody that I would have taken a bullet for was, using the bullet against, took the bullet and was firing at me. It was just, it was hard to comprehend.
The thing that pisses me off with, the comments that you get sometimes when people try to discredit our community, they try to put it back on the person that's experienced. Well, it's your fault. You're the one that got into it. You should have picked better. Is there some truth to that? Yes, there is. But like you said,
There's
20
absolutely
years,
truth
Duane.
to that.
There's some truth. But like you said, 20 years, sometimes you might not know until it gets to that point. And then you realize, like, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And sometimes
Oh,
they don't
yeah.
reveal themselves until it's too late. Right. And once that's there, I mean, I don't know about for you, but like experiencing parental alienation and all of these different things, I had no idea what I was going through. And you mentioned, like early on, I made a lot of mistakes. Like I used to get very angry. It's like, you said I did
Yeah. Oh,
what?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
what? You know what I mean? I had
I
never
know, man.
experienced anything like this before. And so I did. I would have responded completely different now. I wouldn't have responded at all unless I absolutely had to, because they can't play the game if you don't participate.
That is
It's
so
kind of the way
true.
I look at it. They cannot play the game if you don't participate. So if you start seeing that gaslighting coming in, stop it. I'll talk to you in person or when we got to
Oh, not in
whatever, but I'm
person.
not doing
No,
this.
don't do it in person. Do it through email. I wouldn't even recommend text because it's too direct connect to you. You need to give yourself distance. And yeah,
I
sorry,
disconnected
I
my
just said it.
text. No. I understand what you're saying. But at least in a way where it's not going to be, let's be honest, they're going to spin it no matter what. But I do think email is probably one of the better ways. I cut
Yeah.
communication on text. I would get
Oh, you
text at 2,
text is
3,
bad.
4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I finally got to the point and it's like, there's no peace here. I'm blocking it. Well, now it'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, now they don't want to communicate. You know what I mean? Oh, they're not
Well,
trying. It's like,
it's a
no.
double right. I mean, it's the double bind, and I don't know how much you talk about this, but I talk about this a lot on my channel. Is these scenarios? It's all bad decisions, right? You respond to them, and you're basically rolling around in the mud with a pig. You don't respond to them. Now you won't co-parent, and you're being difficult. I mean, it's like no matter what you do, it's not going to be the right thing. So we're stuck in this scenario where we have to pick. You have to just step back and say, okay, I got to basically look at the entire situation and what's the least worst decision or response that I can make. And it's hard. I mean, this stuff is not easy, not
No,
easy at all.
what's the saying? If you wrestle with pigs, the pigs like it, and you both get
Yeah.
dirty. I mean,
Well,
it's definitely true.
and that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the fact that narcissistic cluster B type people enjoy chaos. So whenever
Yes.
you respond back with if they send you a 3-page email telling you what a piece of crap you are, and you send a 2-page email back saying why they're wrong, we're stressed. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, when I had those things and I did it, I was not having a good time. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to make this articulate point to prove no, I'm like, I was frustrated and stressed and irritated. And I felt like I had to respond because if I don't respond, it's going to tacitly say that what she's saying is true. And it's not, and it's just like, and the thing that's what I wanted to mention. I had a thought I wanted to bring up on that. If you're in this scenario that Eric and I are talking about right now, the one thing I want you to think about or remember is they want you to respond. They want you to engage. And if you realize that that's what they're trying to get you to do and you don't do it, even though you're not doing anything, it can feel very empowering that you are not doing what they're trying to get you to do. And that's one of the things I was able to do that helped me whenever I started to slow myself down. Like I have a technique that I call hybrid no contact. That's what I came up with when I was dealing it. If you guys are familiar with Bill Eddy, he wrote the BIF brief. Oh God, I can't remember what the acronym is, but I mean, it's a similar concept, but it's the whole idea is, really measuring and tailoring your responses so that it doesn't create extra conflict and it doesn't feed into their chaos.
Oh yeah, they love the argument, and they're going to find a way. And then when you don't respond, the gaslighting gets worse, the allegations gets worse, and it becomes almost impossible to detach yourself from that situation. I think that's why email is so good. If you get the email and it doesn't have anything to do with the kids or what you need to know, don't engage.
Well, and I would also say on the email thing, so when you get the email, even if you respond immediately, don't hit send. Just leave it as a draft email.
Yes.
Don't hit send and come back. You know, I got to the point where back in the day when we'd still do it, I got to the point where it's like 2 days. If I get it on Monday, I'll send a response on Wednesday. I am not, because I mean, I don't know how many, show of hands, put it in the comments. How many of us have been in that situation where you get an email and within, as fast as you can clickety clack on the damn keyboard, you're sending a flaming response. And I can type fast, right? I mean, I type like 120 words a minute. I mean, I can crank out some characters. And I mean, dude, I would be sending it out too damn fast. And it's just, don't do it.
Well, because you think that you're solving the situation when really it's just that hamster wheel. You're going to keep going around on it. There's going to be no end to it. And like I said, the more you do it, the more you engage, the more they just keep playing the game. And all it's going to do is get you more frustrated. It's going to gaslight you even more. And it can become very hard to overcome that mindset. I remember, like, before I knew not to engage or what was going on, Duane, my head was going crazy, man.
Mine too.
Like, I would sit there at night. I wasn't sleeping. I was trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. And I literally thought I was going nuts. And I was, what in the world is going on with me? And that's it. It makes you question everything about your reality. Another one of these things, I mean, like when you're talking to somebody like this, we're talking about the different disorders and stuff like that. They did mention this in the Depp trial, and I thought this was very important. One of the more dangerous people out there that you're going to talk to when you're communicating in situations like this is the one that knows how to put that little bit of truth in there. They know how to put that, 50 to 75% truth and leave out that one little bit. So when you, as a person, are reading these things that they're saying about you, you're like, okay, this is true. This is true. Like, it gets you questioning everything about yourself. And if you're not very aware and paying attention to what's going on in every situation, they will know how to take that off of them and put it back on you. It was not me. This is you. You on it.
Oh yeah.
And when they're telling that truth, it's hard. It makes that gaslighting 10 times worse.
Well, and see, and that's the crazy part, right? I mean, I remember I was saying in my situation, there were things that are like exactly that. It's like, okay, well, there's an element of truth to it, but it's out of context. That's what I was saying before about some of the stuff that I think probably happened with Amber is there was probably, well, okay, I'll do another example if I remember this correctly. The trailer park thing, right? I can't remember what it was called. The place in Palm Springs with the old RVs. And, she got on there and it's like, oh, she grabbed her, my friend's hand and said, how much pressure it takes to break a hand. And the owner, the manager came in and was freaked out and couldn't believe how much was damaged, but Johnny just made it go away. And they, and I don't, okay. So the thing with the friend, who knows, who knows what happened there, but what we do know, because as far as I know, nobody came and testified that yes, Mr. Depp grabbed my arm, leaned into me and said, you know how much pressure it takes to break a wrist or break a bone or whatever. But they did have, or what I did see was the manager or the owner of that place come in and say, oh my God, I was really worried. I got a call that there was a problem and there'd been damage in the thing. And I rushed over there and I went in and he said, I was relieved that there was no damage. There was one sconce that breaks. They break all the time. And that's the thing, right? So she made, was there something broke? Yes. Yeah, it was broke, right? I mean, yeah, it was broke. And, it was $75 or $65 to replace. But they took it. I think you posted a thing where someone said half truths, but they are able to take things out of context and spin this story or this narrative that to anybody else who didn't hear the other side of it. And that was what was so fascinating about this case is we got to see the other side, right? Because normally what would happen is you would have an ex saying, Johnny, he was so horrible. I mean, we went to this place and we went to this RV park and he flew into a rage and he broke everything and they had to get it fixed. And you don't hear any other story. You don't know anything. And you're thinking, oh my God, maybe if you knew Johnny Depp, maybe if you're like, man, that does not sound like, but I could see people saying, well, that doesn't sound like him, but man, I've never seen him behind closed doors. I've never seen him with an intimate partner. Well, maybe, right? I mean, that's what happens. And they're able to take and spin this stuff to where everyone else who's looking at it just goes, and cursory, because it's like a drive-by almost. It's like, okay, well, it's probably true. Duane probably is abusive. Eric probably is, whatever the heck it made up, because it's not like we're sitting there going, no, excuse me, pardon me, can I clarify what we're talking about here, right?
Well, and that's what court does. You're not there to talk about how good a person the other person is. It's about how much mud can you sling. There is nobody here that's on this chat or anywhere in the world that's not going to have mistakes that they made in their life, things that they shouldn't have done. But they find those, and then they get the magnifying glass and just put it on. Again, the megapine. It became that. And you got to, even in the words, I'm glad he caught that when they said that to him. I really am, because they were setting that picture, up. It's about making the person look as bad as they can. And that sucks in family court. When you're taking two people that once loved each other, they loved each other enough, or it could at least put up with each other long enough to have a child, and they hit conflict, and you take them in the middle of that conflict and put them in this circus that's there to throw mud at each other, and the child is in the middle. The legislation, the court should be ashamed of themselves if they existed, because there is going to be times where family court is going to be needed. I know we can't get rid of it altogether. There's going to be cases where it's going to be needed. But if it does exist, it should be there to decrease the conflict. And when we get in court, if we see there's one party that's not wanting to abide, or they're not wanting to get along, that should be a red flag immediately.
Dude, I hear you, man. I think one of the biggest travesties about this in family court is most of the time a child wants to have a relationship with both parents. And I think anytime a child is saying, I hate my mom, I hate my dad, whatever the case is, that should be a flare should go up right then and there to say, hey, wait a minute. Because there are people where they have horrible parents, they're horrible people. Maybe they're in jail or they're whatever. And the other parent isn't using that to try to, they're letting the kids still visit the in-laws. They're taking the kids to see, dad or mom in prison. And then you have a situation to where, for no apparent reason, no bona fide abuse, right? I mean, I get it if it's like, if there is some type of SV thing with a child or whatever, okay, fine. Those are the scenarios where maybe a kid wouldn't want to be around. Well, not maybe, but I could see where that would be justified. But you have a situation to where there's no real evidence of abuse, and now the kid hates the other parent. I remember at one point, like in one of the evaluations we were doing, the ex was like, "Oh, I never talk bad about Duane." And the reality is the person was like, "Hey, when Duane came in and the kids were there, they all huddled around you, scared to death to even acknowledge their dad, until you said, yeah, go ahead, go say hi to your dad." I mean, it was like, that only happens because the kids have been programmed that your dad is bad. Or, that in my scenario, it was dad is bad. I mean, it's like, people need to understand that when someone says, so if we're sitting there and someone says, my kids, don't want to see their dad, they're really angry with them, that should be a red flag that something's wrong, right? I mean, if a kid says, hey, I'm 15 or 16 years old and I got sports, or I'm going out with my friends, or I'm doing other things, and I don't want to go see dad this weekend, or I don't want to go see mom this weekend because of that. Okay, fine. That can make sense. But when it's like, no, I don't want to be over there, that doesn't, there's something else going on.
Oh, 100%. Because kids love their parents. It's not in their heart to just reject a parent. So there's, in some way, that's got there. I see you get a comment down here though, Duane. You want me to pull that up?
Yeah. Sorry, I was sitting here. I'm glad you said that before I started flipping my screens around. Okay, so William Joseph, who asked questions, says, does a narcissist know he or she is a narcissist, and can they ever feel bad about it? Okay, so for NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, typically, and this is what's tough. I get a version of this question, because when you start learning about cluster B and personality disorders, what you'll hear is that a narcissist does not know that they're a narcissist. And inevitably what happens, and this happened to me, Because when I started looking into it, I'm like, oh my God, you'll look at the criteria and it says that, a narcissist doesn't know that they have a problem. And I'm like, oh my God, maybe that's me. I mean, I can see some of these behaviors. And unfortunately, I had a therapist at the time, and I asked the question, and they said, the mere fact that you're worried about it, you're concerned that you might have this condition or this issue and it's hurting people, means you don't. So the reality is, people with NPD typically do not think that they have a problem. Those are the people who are like, oh, everyone else is the problem. I'm not the problem. Everyone else is, everyone else is the mean person. Everyone else is the jerk. Everyone else is, this, that, or the other. And there is no, and like Amber's a good example of that as well.
Yep.
Because in all those things, did she ever acknowledge anything problem with her, or was it always someone else lied? Someone else didn't make up the truth. Someone else, they're here because they want their 15 minutes of fame, whatever it was. There was no acknowledgement that there even could have been a problem with her, other than the fact that she's the victim. Right?
Yeah, they cannot see any of that at all. But I think there's other parts of this too. We say narcissist, the one size fits all. Duane, I'm curious. Do you think that everybody has a hint of narcissism?
Absolutely. And you have to have healthy narcissism because
exactly.
Yes, because you have to have some. I mean, if you didn't have some self-awareness that you need to kind of take care of yourself, that's not good for you either. The problem is when it gets to be a problem, and again, I'm not a therapist, but when a personality disorder starts negatively affecting your life, then it's a problem, and it could warrant to where it would need treatment. And I will say that there are treatment plans for borderline personality disorder. It's not 1,000% effective. And I can't remember, cognitive behavior therapy, if I remember correctly, is what it is. But I mean, it's one of those things that they're lifelong going to be dealing with this. I mean, if you're wired differently, you're wired differently.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. And that case was definitely a perfect example of this. I mean, again, Johnny, he wasn't completely innocent, but he owned up to it, whereas Amber couldn't see anything that was going on. And she might have actually found some sympathy if she could have owned up to some of it. I mean, maybe not much, but at least people would have, okay, she looks a little bit remorseful. There was not a bit. I'm not going to own up to it. I'm sticking with this allegation, even though I know nobody's, believing it. I'm sticking with it. And yeah, man.
The crazy part about that is, Eric, is that the reality of it. Hold on, I'm moving windows around. The reality of it is, they have no ability to take a step back and look at or even, this is an analogy I often use on this. And I think this would probably be the case for Amber. If she could acknowledge that there's trauma there, that there's issues that could be resolved, she could heal emotionally and have a good life. The analogy that I often say is it's like it's a person who's in a jail cell that the door is unlocked. All they have to do is push it to leave, and they won't do it. And the sad reality, and this is what I think, if you look at Amber's scenario is, and if you look at like her relationships, like every relationship up until Johnny is like a year. I saw a video where someone was like, they went through all the relationships and like this person, 12 months, 13 months, 9 months. I mean, just bam, 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 until it got to Johnny. And he obviously got with his issues that he has too, he got sucked into it. And the reality is these people, she more than likely is probably the exact same person she was when she was probably 15, doing the same games, playing the same stupid thing, the same scenario, and just lather, rinse, and repeat, and just path of destruction and chaos that she will probably continue until the day she dies. Unfortunately, it's just sad.
Oh yeah, man. I'm curious when talking about these things and how like a narcissist or borderline bipolar, a lot of times they can't see anything that they're doing. They can't own up to anything that they're doing. And you're trying to analyze this. Has that in any way, when you're dealing with one of these toxic situations, made you become overly critical of yourself, wanting to make sure, like, let me go analyze this before I step into this conversation?
If I understand what you're asking, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I started learning about this, I took a step back and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be a person that's bringing chaos and turmoil and stuff into someone else's life.
Right.
And I was trying to work. I mean, you know what, guys, I'll throw this out here. Anybody who's dealing with this, and if you're in the early stage of this, what I'm about to say is probably not going it probably won't land well, but I'll say this. The one benefit for these horrific, horrible situations is they force us to look at ourselves and start, asking the questions of how did I get here? Right? We all have a piece that we played in this. I had a piece that I played in this. Absolutely. It was lack of boundaries. It was my own insecurities, my own projection of what I thought, the other person was. I mean, I had this fantastical view of who my ex was, an unwillingness to really see reality. And I took this as an opportunity. I'm like, oh my God, I do not want to do this again. I mean, I've seen people in real life who go through a toxic relationship. I've watched women do this where they'll have a relationship. It'll be complete crap. And then they'll fall. Then, 3 months later, they're in a new relationship. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. 3 months later, it's crap. And it's like, I mean, it's just,
I've done that.
Oh my God, I do not. Oh yeah. But see, that's the thing though. We go through these effing patterns. And let me ask you this, Eric, because here's the crazy part about this it's God or the universe. It's like they give us that first thing. Okay, I'm going to throw this at you. Are you going to figure it out? No. Well, let's make the next one more painful to see if you figure it out this time. So I'm asking you, was all three of those progressively worse than the other one?
In many ways, I think. So like in my situation, I went through a bad divorce. It was very ugly, and I had a very low self-esteem. So I validated myself on somebody else's desire for me, right? So I hurried back into a relationship. My confidence is shot, and that was how I kind of felt, valued as a man. And when I start experiencing these problems, it kind of seems familiar to me, right? So I'm not kind of questioning it. Now that I've been, me and my wife was talking about this the other day. We've been together for about 3 years. We never argue. Knock on wood. Please don't let her start. But we never argue. And it's not until you kind of get yourself out of that scenario and look back and like, wow, how wasn't I catching that? But again, if you don't heal from that trauma, you're going to carry it on into other relationships. And I think that's the important thing about it. We are all going to make mistakes. And I think
absolutely.
that, when this kind of stuff or any type of conflict comes up now, I try to analyze before I go and like, oh, they're doing this, or this. I'm like, what is my part in this?
Yep.
What was my part in this? So I can meet in the middle, find out how we can kind of come together before I do that. And I think if you've got that ability, which most of the time MPD and BPD and all these people don't have, that's how you become a better person. Because you can realize what's going on and you can work on
that. The only thing I want to add on to that, and it's just for anybody who's in the beginning part, because what I've noticed, and I even fell into this too, when you're really early into it, and Eric's absolutely right with what he said, and I 100% agree with what he's saying. You just have to be careful that if you're in the early part of this, don't take that and drive yourself into the ground going, oh my God, this is, it was partly my fault. And when I screwed this whole thing up and I'm a bad person, and it's so easy to fall into that. There's a time. And that's why some people, like on my channel, I'll get comments every once in a while. It's like, well, what was your part in it? And I'm cautious about talking about that in a lot of my videos, because I know that you're at that vulnerable state. If someone says that, you can drive yourself into the ground. There'll be time once you kind of figure out what you're dealing with to do that. But you need to do that work. If you don't do that work, you're not going to achieve the growth and the life-changing transformation that's possible as a result of these really horrific experiences.
Absolutely, man. So there was two different parts from that. You remember when I asked you the question, I was like, when dealing with these people, were there times where you kind of became overly critical of yourself? If you're in the middle of that conflict, absolutely. And you start trying to put stuff on yourself, trying to make sense of it because the other side's not taking any responsibility at all. And then what happens is you go around carrying this baggage all day long that doesn't belong to you. I mean, even the people that's fighting these family law battles, they're sitting there carrying all this guilt. Like, I don't have my children. So they can't quit. They're constantly in their head, always emotional. And it's like, yeah, it's okay to forgive yourself. It's okay to forgive yourself. You're doing what you can, and you don't have to carry around all this guilt. So when you're in the middle of that, that can be like a cancer because you will be very overly critical of yourself. When I'm talking about that and like the analyze it, saying what was my part, I think that's more for the healed person. Once they find that healing and you kind of have gotten out of that, but you're 100% correct. I was that guy, Duane. Like, I would make excuses or try to, find out, was it me all the time? And you become overly critical and you second guess everything about you, which is why they do it in the first place. They want you to second guess everything about yourself.
What I'll say on that is one of the things that used to happen to me is every once in a while I'd have a moment of clarity and I'm like, man, this is wrong. Right. And I would like feel like I need to set a boundary, and I wouldn't do it because I would rationalize with myself. I'm like, well, I'm always happy every other time. I'm just angry. I'm just feeling out of sorts, and I don't want to risk blowing up the marriage because of this. So I would, I'd shut down and stop talking. Now, one of the things I could even relate to with what John, and I wasn't physically, that I can remember, physically attacked. I didn't get my finger cut off or anything like that. But there were absolutely times where when the arguments would start and that's why it was so weird listening to some of those recordings, because some of those things that were being said and the way they were being said, it's like, oh my God, I've heard this before. And I would basically do the same thing. I would just shut up, take my beating, my verbal beating, and then try to extricate myself and go to sleep or, call it a night and just move on. And it's, that's what I think is really interesting about this case. And what I've noticed is on certain things, there's certain people I've covered, to include this, the Johnny Depp, Amber Heard thing, where people will have like a visceral reaction. Another example of that would be like Caleb Leverett. If anyone's, on my channel, I've done some stuff with him, where there are people who think he's the greatest guy in the world. And then there are people who think he is a narcissistic SOB. And the reality is that these experiences trigger. Someone else made a comment about this, or a comment earlier about it being a triggering type thing. And that's what it is, right? It's like we see our ex, right? So a lot of us, when we look at Amber Heard, we see we were like, oh my God, I know this person. They didn't look like her, but they're that. And I think it's the same thing. So I think that the smaller minority of people who have been a victim, like a woman who's on Amber's side, who looks at Johnny and says, oh my God, he's a narcissist. He's manipulating everybody. It's because they've experienced it, and their toxic ex has been able to play that game. I had someone comment on my side that's what their ex did. Their ex-husband was able to push their buttons and get them to make a bunch of mistakes, lost custody and everything. And I'm sure those type of people are looking at it. Is that, oh, I got Siri trying to take over my stuff. Anyways, and I think that's the thing. It all is generally going to come down to personal experiences of what we have and what we can relate to. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does, man. And that was one of the reasons, like, I was so eager to, and I love any time that me and you are doing these conversations together, because even though we might have different viewpoints, while you're talking and telling your experience, I'm reliving my personal experience. And a lot of these guys, you know, because they haven't been really gave a spot to talk about this. A lot of these
Yeah.
people fight this battle alone, thinking that nobody's going to understand them because the outside world, for the most part, don't, unless you've been there. And then we get in here and we start talking about these things. And you're like, oh, I went through that too. I know what that's like, every little detail of it. So when we're watching that case and we're seeing the tricks that's being played, the fake emotions, the allegations, every bit of it, you're saying, that was me. That was me. There were so many guys that I had that wrote in and said, I am Johnny Depp. You know what I mean? They was actually identifying as Johnny Depp and looking at Amber Heard as their ex.
Yeah.
And I can understand why.
You know what, man? And what you just said is one of the reasons, I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but one of the reasons why I created the channel and why I have basically, you know, sometimes I used to, in the early days, I would joke that I just kind of basically threw my man card on the table because I'm talking about stuff that most people won't, right? It's like, you know, a lot of people, well, let's talk men specifically. A lot of men have gone through this and they got zero support. They basically were told to suck it up, man up. You know, this stuff happens. You just need to muscle through it. And what ends up happening is you either don't make it through it and you do the self-deletion thing, or you do make it through it and you don't ever want to think about it and you pretend and you act like it didn't happen. And the problem I had with that is for the guy who's going through this and looking, and if they're looking at someone else who said they went through it, and it's like, well, Bill over here has gone through this and he didn't have the problems I'm having. So I'm not Bill. So I can't make it through it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I talk about the stuff that I do and I put it out there the way I do, is because I want people to understand this effing sucks. This is not easy. You will experience some of the dark, and I'm sure Johnny did too. You know, you experience some of the darkest days you've ever had in your life, but you're not alone. And that's why I think it's so important what you're doing, what I'm doing, and just the fact that we're getting this information out there, because people who are going through it, like you were just saying, like, especially with the Johnny Depp case, is like, oh my God, that's me. I've experienced that. I've had these false allegations. I've had people, you know, or I had somebody who said that I did these horrible things. I mean, with what she said Johnny did, he should be in prison. He should have been arrested, thrown in jail, and had the prison
thrown away.
Yeah, buried underneath it. I mean, I mean,
well, you know, you get this comment from Kaiser saying, man up and get over it is what we're told. And for years, that's what's basically been said. And a lot of other men do that to other men. So I'm not going to let them out of it either. They haven't created that community where they can reach across the aisle and talk to their brother and try to provide help. I think sometimes they actually create it between themselves. Instead of going and trying to talk to another man, you know, they get with this woman and they tell them all these bad things about their ex-husband, and they just believe it. They just believe it. When a simple conversation or trying to do your homework, you might find out I could learn something from this situation that I might go through a little bit later on. But it's that pride, well, dude, and one thing we got, you know.
I'll tell you, man, you know, way back when, I mean, I got married early. I was 19. Didn't date long, but you know, once my beautiful little butterfly was telling me how everyone had wronged her, how all the other guys were bad and they were jerks and they treated her badly. And I'm like, well, I'm not that. I'm going to be, you know, and I believed it all. I mean, now, I mean, one of the hardest parts for me way back when in the early stages of this, when I finally started having an awareness of what I'm dealing with, I'm like, I remember sitting there one day going, oh my God, I'm the latest jerk. I'm the next in line. That's the piece of crap. That's the, you know, was abusive and horrible. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, now it's my turn in the barrel. You know, I mean, it's just crazy.
Oh, it is. It is. And then you just realize there's a pattern that goes on there. And the warning signs was there when you was hearing that in the beginning, but you're not looking for them. You know, we get blinded by it sometimes. And that's what, you know, conversations like we're having now and warning other people, like this is some of the stuff you need to look out for. There is the truth to that we could have prevented a lot of the stuff that we've been through had we known better. There should be places that kind of warn these guys.
Yeah. The problem is that, you know, I think I mean, I'm not sure what your background is, but I mean, I came from a broken family, you know, so I already had issues, right? And I had a problem. I had, well, probably not so much. Well, I would say probably not now, but considering I have a YouTube channel, maybe that's not the case. But what I was going to say is I would overshare. So, and when you're dealing with a toxic person, they will intently listen. And this is what Amber, I mean, if you guys had followed some of the, and I have another person I do some collaborations with, and we did some videos on this way back when, before the UK trial. Amber mirrored Johnny. She became exactly who he wanted to be. And that, you know, when you're looking for somebody and somebody is morphing into, not morphing, is presenting themselves as exactly the person that you always wanted. You know, they're into the same things you're into. They think the same way. You know, it's like you feel like you're finishing each other's sentences. It's a very powerful and intoxicating situation to be in. And the problem is you get that and you start going down that road. And then when the facade or the mask slips, you're still thinking about that mirroring, and the love bombing is what it's called as well. And you're like focused on that. It's like, okay, so you make excuses. So when the red flags start popping up, you're like, oh, well, you know, the high or the drug when I took, which is the, you know, beginning part of the relationship, you know, that's what's real. These other things are just bad days. You know, it's not really what it is. And you're fixated on what the illusion is. And it's a dangerous trap to get into. It's really, I mean, it'll definitely make your life complicated. That's for damn sure.
Dude, what you were saying made so much sense. Looking back at it, that's never something I guess I've really talked about on here, but that is definitely much true. You know, and when going back on this and talking about, you know, you starting your channel and everything, and maybe sometimes oversharing, you know, what was that like for you? You know, doing the channel and then you start going through your own personal problems, and now you got to come in here and make content for other hurting people. Sometimes it's kind of hard not to just come on here and say, look at what happened, you know, with what's going on,
Well,
right?
you know, honestly, man, it's a good question. And this is what I'll say. You know, when I was going through this, I remember thinking in the early part of it, and I didn't start the channel until 5 years into it, 4 or 5 years post divorce. And for me, I got to be a little careful how I say this, but my thought was this: I knew how dark this was when I was going through it.
Yep.
And I knew that I could not find, there was at the time, 10 years ago, I could not find any resources for, especially for men, right?
Yep.
There were no YouTube. The only thing, if I did a search, what I found is men making videos talking about how horrible their life was, how they lost everything, how, you know, basically they should just stop the pain. And I'm like, this isn't helpful. And I always thought that, I'm like, you know, maybe someday I'll be able to do something. I thought maybe I'd write a book or do something to try to make some positive out of it. And then around the time that I decided that I got the epiphany or the inspiration to do the channel, I was just thinking, you know, if maybe one of my silly little videos can get somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're trying to make a decision on whether they may not be there in the morning, maybe that might give them enough to say, hey, this knucklehead makes some sense, and I'll wait. So my point of this is, when I made the channel, I was doing pretty good emotionally. I healed from, I saw somebody, Neo down on my side had said, I don't have it up, but I'll just read it. It says, my suggestion: get professional help, get therapists involved, talk with pros who specialize in NARC and BPD. Trauma therapists is what I always recommend. You'll need that for perspective. Take out a loan if you need to. I did. But the thing is that, you know, so I was doing pretty good. So the interesting part for me is, when I started doing this channel, it hasn't really been triggering for me. When someone would come up with a story and I could relate to it, instead of it emotionally affecting me, like reliving my experience, I could empathize with what the person was going through. I could remember back what I was feeling when I went through it. And I could then basically say, okay, what would have, and this is how I did a lot of my early videos, is like, what message would have been the best to potentially help me at that vulnerable state. You know what I'm saying? And that's so for the most part, it didn't negatively affect me. Now, I will say that the Facebook groups, some of the stuff I had to start weaning myself on that, back off of that, because some of the comments are just really negative. And it's just, it's not healthy for anybody to kind of stay in that mindset. You know what I mean?
No, it's not. And that's, yeah, I answer as many messages as I can, man, but a lot I just let go by because you cannot consume that all day long. You just can't.
Yeah.
But, the other side of that, even as, content creators and talking about these issues, we've been there so we can relate to guys. But what is that like, Duane, doing this? And then every once in a while, you're still going to have these issues that are going to arise. And then we're sitting here telling these guys, this is what you need to do. Okay. This is what you need to be mindful of. And then you're
right.
through it.
You're absolutely right. And it's almost, I will say that when it happens, I don't laugh, but what ends up happening is something will happen. And I'm like, I know how to deal with this. I mean, do I need to go watch my own damn video? Because I know what I need to do. I know how I need to interact, and I mean, and I still get some people who I've been, who've been through this, who will sometimes give me advice that is not good advice. And I just kind of roll with it. I mean, I just, I'm like, okay, if I was, I'm dealing with this scenario, what would I tell someone else to do? And I try to follow my own advice. Now, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's not easy. I'll tell you that one.
No, man, yeah. I can remember those moments. Every so often you start going through it, and then your emotions start going, and all that stuff from the past comes back, and you're like, doggone it. Yeah, I know what I'm supposed to be doing right now, and it's getting to me, and it makes you empathize with the audience even more, right?
And let me say this, guys. So just to be clear, right? So I'm not super, if anybody who's older remember Super Dave Osborne, I'm not super Duane Osborne. And Eric and I have had conversations sometimes privately offline where I'll vent, so he's seen me in times where I'm not having the best of day. So, I mean, it's like this stuff does impact you, right? I mean, this isn't easy. It does get better. I mean, I will say 1000% my life today is the best it's ever been with what I've been through, with what I've lost financially, with the impact of my relationship, even with my kids. And, I mean, everything. I mean, even the medical problems that I'm having that are not that are complicating my life. I am still grateful that I've had this experience and that I've been able to detach myself from toxicity, from chaos, and find real peace. And it's like if I die tomorrow, I'm like, at least I got to experience, at least I didn't go to my grave living in that chaos. Yeah. Anyways.
No, man, I get it, and it's one of the things, when you're fighting for your kids and you're going through this again, you constantly want to work on it. Some people focus on it all day long, man. If you're going to get through this, you're going to have to take some breaks, and make sure, because every one of these stories, if you're a person that cares and you're hearing what somebody's going through, you attach it, right? And then if you just keep piling on more, eventually what's going to happen, you're going to find yourself in a dark place. There was a couple of times, man, that I wasn't. And Duane, you were one of the ones that I talked to. As I do, I don't know if I can do it anymore. It was, I couldn't go to sleep. I was constantly thinking about what was going on. So, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, guys. It's the cliche thing. You can't love anybody else until you love yourself. So it's okay to take care of yourself. And if you're going to be getting through the situations like we've been discussing, that's going to be a must.
You, Eric, you are so right. And what I'll say on that is you have to add something else into your life, right? I get that when you're going through this, and especially when you first start realizing that, oh my God, I might be dealing with somebody who has a personality disorder, you will spend hours and hours in NPD University and it will consume everything, but you need to have something else. And if you are, like Eric was saying, if you're dealing with this every day and you're not giving yourself a break, and there's a period of time where it'll be helpful for you, but if you find yourself getting worn out, you need to do something different. Like an example of that is I have another channel that's really small that's camping. Has nothing to do with this topic. It's just me and maybe my kids going out and going to the mountains and camping, and I'm playing with making videos and stuff like that. And it's just something completely different. And you cannot consume this stuff day in and day out. If you, like I was talking about earlier, if you find yourself like in the Facebook groups or whatever, and you find that it's dragging you down, take a break. Hide them. I think in Facebook, I don't do a lot of stuff on Facebook. I think you can say, hey, don't show me this for 30 days. Give yourself a break, because I'm not even saying, I'm sure Eric, you'd agree with me. If you find yourself that watching DSD, watching my channel, or watching Dad Talk Today, and it's just dragging you down, it's okay to take a break. And of course we want your views. We want your clicks and we want your support. But at the same time, we do not want you to lose yourself in the midst of all this.
Absolutely not. And I can understand, even the triggers that I was again, watching that Johnny Depp case. I know a lot of people have said they could not watch that. I've had people that we put our heart and soul into making I Stand With John, the documentary.
Oh yeah.
And I had people that got like through the first 20 minutes who was like, Eric, I couldn't. And it was like, I can't, I get it. Like I get it.
I tell you, man, on the Johnny, you did okay. If anyone hasn't watched I Stand With John documentary that Eric did, I just got to say, he did a fantastic job on the very first documentary, and he knocked that freaking thing out of the park. I've actually talked to other people, and I've said that, that I've worked with, that I do some coaching with for the YouTube side. And I use you as an example. And I say that people who are like in broadcast news, and I'm like, this guy did this. You need to look at this documentary because he did it. You did an amazing job. So guys, if you haven't watched that, I Stand With John, watch that, because it is, it's a heart-wrenching story. I know Eric talked a little bit about the case, I think when at the beginning of when we started the show, but it's you did a fantastic job on that, man. You did great.
I appreciate it. That was one of the more important things of doing a documentary like I Stand With John. It went through the false allegations, family court, civil court, CPS, child support, like the whole 9 yards was involved. But when you start hearing of this conflict and these allegations and feeling like you're up against, you're at that dead end and you can't get any further. I understand how some guys that aren't healed that be in that spot right there. Be the best thing for it.
And how tragic that's, just so people understand, that story is this John, horrific false allegations towards his kids, fought it, won it. Finally at the end, it was exonerated. It's like, he did not do these things to his kids, horrific things. Got 50, I think it was, he basically was awarded not custody, but he, time with his kids. The first day he goes to get his kids, that should have been the best day, was murdered by his ex-father-in-law. It's a horrific story. It's a horrific story. And I know, Eric has spent so much time on this, because you can't have that and have it mean nothing and just be a statistic.
No, sorry, man. The guy dedicated his life to this. He dedicated his life to fighting for his kids, and then seeing that happen. Another thing is, and I'll sound like a hypocrite because I'm the one that does it all the time, is reading the memes. Holy crap. Like, all right. So we're going to peel back the curtain a little bit, Duane. I do a lot of the memes and stuff on the page because I'm keeping the audience engaged in between making the videos. It's I can't make videos all day long. So I've got those going, and sometimes I might get one and I look back at it later and I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But I'm sitting there picking them out the other day to get some scheduled.
Some of them are pretty hilarious. I've seen you post.
Some of them are. Even the one with Amber Heard the other day saying, do I have to pay the $13 million or can I just pledge it?
I love that one.
My wife made that up.
I love that one. Oh, can you pull that up to show people? So he made a meme that basically said, do I have to pay the 15 million or the 10 million or can I pledge it? It was awesome.
I don't have a copy of it on here, but you guys you can see that. But me and my wife was sitting in the restaurant, and she said that, and I was like, it's getting memed. And we had it going within 30 seconds.
I wanted to just, the other thing I did, and it's kind of a little off topic, but just, one of the things that's amazing for me with Eric, and we've talked about this offline, but I'll say this right now, is Eric has actually been able to do everything that I had hoped to do with my channel. You're interviewing a ton of people. You're getting in front of people. You are making so much progress in getting our issues, the corruption in family law, the false allegations, how this system is weaponized against parents in front of, Congress people, governors, ex-presidents. I mean, most of you guys, this topic is kind of not really, looked highly upon, right? Most people, it's like, oh, you're fighting for fathers' rights.
Yes.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Nice meeting you, and it's like, you never hear from the person again. And you have made so much inroads on this. And this stuff isn't easy, guys. I mean, he doesn't, neither one of us really set out in life for this to be the thing that we're spending our time on. But I'm so impressed of what you've been able to accomplish, the progress that you've made. Some of the stuff that people don't even know. You and I have had conversations offline, but and he deserves a tremendous amount of respect. And the sad part is there's a big part of different communities that are, I could have been that way. I could have been like, gosh darn it, that effer Eric is doing everything I wanted to do, and I hate him, and I just want to see him fail. You know what? I'm glad that somebody has been able to do it. I would have loved it to be me, but I'm glad someone's doing it and knocking it out of the park. And you guys, anybody is on right now, give a clap or whatever, or say, yo, Eric, in the comments, because he absolutely deserves it.
I appreciate that, man. It wasn't always that way. We're the underdogs in any of these places that we go through. It's that conversation that nobody wants to have. And I can remember back when we very first started going to conferences and political conventions and stuff like that, or when I would email people and ask them, hey, would you come on the show and talk about this? They wouldn't even reply. Yeah. But as it started going, we started getting more of the influencers and attending more of the conventions. Then the same people would turn around and say, hey, I would love to come on your show. And so you might go in there and it might be that lost conversation in the beginning, but everybody you talk to, I don't care who it is, everybody you talk to in one way or another, they've either been through this or they know somebody that has. And if you find out where that is, and that's where you take the conversation somewhere where they can relate to it, you can talk about this issue to anybody. It's just learning how to strategize and where to go with the conversation once you get it.
And the problem is how you said, where to go with the conversation, how to communicate it. The problem is most people who are going through this, that conversation turns into a bleep, 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 that effing bleep, 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 bleep. So you can't effectively communicate with people. That's the one thing that you have an amazing knack for, is being able to add credibility to the conversation so that people listen. And guys, things are starting to change. Rolling this back to the Johnny Depp thing. I know it's not a family court thing, but that was unprecedented. The fact that he was able to do this and win is that's unprecedented. Things are starting. It's not happening as fast as we would like, but things are starting to change. Would you agree?
I won't name any names. I'm going to be nice here. But there was many of these conferences and places that we've been to, very prominent figures that I've had one-on-one conversations with, tried to get them to speak out about it, even tried to get them on the show, and they will not speak about it. And then after the Johnny Depp case the other day, that was all that was on their news feed. And I'm sitting back and say, oh, it's PC for you now. It's okay. Now you're going to do it. You're going to ride the wave when it's popular. And you know what, guys? There's going to be a lot of these places that are going to do that now because it was the hot topic. They're going to talk about it, but as soon as it dies down again, you know where they're going to be? They're going to be gone.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that kind of get under my skin a little bit. But just the fact to see that they are talking
Well, the
about
conversation happening, right? The
it.
conversation needs to happen. I mean,
Yes.
and that honestly, and like you just said, you've noticed that change because of this trial, because of the outcome of this.
Yep.
Some of those conversations are happening that would have never happened.
Because we've tried. I mean, we've tried.
Yeah.
And we had just as much credibility as everybody else in the room when it came to media. And a lot of these people would not talk about it. But it's PC now. They don't have to worry about the cancel culture coming after them if they were to mention the word men or fathers or false allegations, right? And that's why you got to be so careful with it. It kind of goes into this verticeable. He said, I'm sure many powerful and wealthy men have gone through this stuff. Why do you think they haven't used their position in life to push laws? Cancel culture. If they get out there and start talking about these issues and they start making an impact, the cancel culture, Me Too, all this will come and try to completely destroy you guys. Politics. The candidate that we had on last week, Duane, very huge father's rights, parents' rights guy. He's been through the family courts. He had done pledge to do stuff. He was running for lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania. Like 11 days before election, they bring his family law battle into it and put it all over the media. It was in Rolling Stone and all this different stuff, and try to turn his wife against him. If you get out there and you try to make a difference, it is not going to be that yellow brick road. There is going to be so many challenges, guys.
You know what? And
probably guys are afraid.
And probably one of the reasons why Johnny did what he did is because he lost so much. He lost his career. He lost his reputation. He had his, if you believe what he said about his, his kids were basically, your dad's a wife beater. He lost everything. So, I mean, he almost, he could either go slink around. I mean, he'd already been canceled. I mean, had he not been canceled, and this is a crazy part, is if Amber would have not wrote the op-ed and completely torpedoed him, he probably would have never said anything. There would always been the allegations. There always would have been the, that he did mean and bad things to her. And he would have always had that little dark cloud hanging on him. But whenever he completely got canceled, what did he have to lose? And most people have something to lose. And like you, Eric, you just said with that poor attorney, I mean, the guy running, he went through the thing. And as soon as they're like, okay, we need to take this guy out, they go for the jugular.
Not only that, the conversations I have off screen that never make it on the screen. There were several other people just like that they didn't want to go public because they were getting attacked in the media and was reaching out like, what do I do? My thing, and I'll tell this to anybody else, in case anybody sees it and they know this in the future, if you're out there trying to make a difference and they come after you and they start attacking you, I want you to face it. I want you to face it and own it and say, look, I have been through some of these issues, but this is it. I'm not here to debate my personal life or anything. We're going to sit here and talk about this system, and we're going to change that and get them back. Don't let them make you hide, because a lot of these guys just ended up dropping off or just quit what they were doing altogether. And that was what it was meant to do. That's what those allegations were meant to do. More of that goes on than you could ever imagine. So that is exactly why you haven't the cancel culture, but also if you're a business, you're somebody that does have money, and you're caught attaching yourself to this without it being PC, there's a reason a lot of the businesses go woke and do the things that they do.
Yeah.
I won't go too deep into that. I think you can put the pieces of the puzzle together yourself.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason why they're not doing it. I have been in rooms with governors, you name it, congressmen, senators, that we have had the conversations. They went through it. They went through the false allegations. They went through the family courts. They've been through every single bit of this, Duane. Every single bit of it. So it happens almost everywhere we go. I was up in New Jersey last week, and I found out one of the people we were speaking in front of been through the whole thing. I don't want to get into their personal situation, but I don't know that there's ever been a place that we've spoke about this without several people coming up saying, man, I've been there. So we need to make it a safe place for them to be able to and have support if they do. The one thing this movement, I'm not trying to go too long, but the one thing this movement and this cause has not learned to do and it's not a popular thing to talk about. It usually makes people drop out, and they're like, I don't want to get involved in that. They got to learn how to vote. They got to learn how to vote. If you have people that are willing to get out there and put their reputation on the line to fight for this cause, you got to make sure they get in, because they get attacked when they fight for this cause. Jeff Younger, for instance, he got out there and he fought tooth and nail. He put the guy in a runoff, but he just lost that election. We needed Jeff Younger there in Texas. And boy, they came after him tooth and nail. And I'm sure they will continue to, because they're going to try to make an example out of him. But we should have had all of our people just resharing that out. This is our guy. We are going to back you up. We've got to learn how to do that. And then the other part of that that's not popular, the donations, and making sure that if somebody's wanting to go to Washington, D.C., or they're wanting to go here, that they have what it takes to be able to get there, because we don't have the grants. We don't have VAWA and all that stuff. It's the billions of dollars that's coming against us. With us having crumbs, we're the ones that are going through the situation, paying the child support, the alimony, the family courts, and trying to get by day after day. And we don't have the same stuff to organize. Most of the time, our people are at work because they're trying to pay that. So, man,
and then the sad reality is, a lot of people, when you get through this, you just want your life back, right? I mean, it's like you've gone through the nightmare. Maybe you've been able to repair the relationship with your kids. You're starting to dig yourself out of the financial hole. And all you want to do is, go sit on the edge of a river with a fishing pole, maybe with a nice drink, and just breathe. I mean, it's hard to stay in this all the time, but I mean, Eric, you're right. I mean, we have to support the people who are really trying to make a difference, because, until there's more awareness for this and people really understand it. And I think this trial did help with that. It's the next people coming up behind us are just going to be dropped into the meat grinder.
So there's similarities in what happened in this case and what I was just talking about with the people voting. A lot of people, and when they heard about the Depp case, well, how does this affect me? How does this affect my personal case? What does this do for me? Discredited everything that it could do, or what it can do for the movement as a whole. What did it do for me right now? So I go and talk to a gubernatorial candidate. People begged to speak about these issues. He was one of the best that you could imagine. And afterwards, and I hate to say this on screen, he was like, Eric, they didn't show up. They didn't vote. He was like, when I ran my campaigns, the same people that was begging me, they didn't. He said, all I hear is, will you do this for me? Will you do this for me? But there was never, I'm going to help you.
Right.
And people are so in like, what does this do for me? What does this do for me? I mean, dude, in order for it to do for us, we're going to have to help do it for everybody. Right. And it can be in many different ways. If you can't donate, or if you can't go to the Capitals, you can share these broadcasts. You can make sure they're getting out. Everybody can help in some way. And we've got to get out of that mindset of what's that instant gratification for this guy right here,
Yep. I agree with you, man. Hey, man, we've gone 2 hours, a little over 2 hours.
Absolutely. I think we're getting ready to roll this out. There's one little comment I was going to read right here real quick, Duane, before we get out of here. It was from Daniel Reed. He said, lots of us have reached the nothing left to lose position, and coming back from that is a crapshoot, since family court is a never ending game. The last thing I ever want to do is tell somebody to give up, but seeing what some of these guys go through, man, I understand why some of them are walking away. I do. I can understand it. I'm not saying that's what needs to happen, but I understand how they're getting in this mindset right here. I mean, it beats you down.
I've made videos about that. And it's like, if you get to the point where this is going to take you out, and it's like, okay, do I just burn drive myself into the ground, or do I walk away to try to regain a life? That's, to me, that's whenever, if you've done everything you can do and this is killing you, at some point, if you've tried everything and you've lost the hearts and minds of your kids, you owe it to yourself to pick up the pieces and try to rebuild your life. And what I'll tell you, I mean, on the flip side to this, and honestly, this is one of the things that kept me going in the early days of this, because I knew the ex, or I felt like the ex wanted to break me. And I was like, I'm going to not give up. I'm just going to basically have a life. I was like, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I want to have a smile on my face, because at the time I cared. I don't care anymore. But at the time I was like, I know it'll just piss her off. And if anybody who's at that point to where you've done everything and it's over, don't do something stupid. Don't hurt yourself. I always hate it when I hear the story about the people who go to the courthouse and literally light themselves on fire. Because it doesn't, all it does is it gives the ex the opportunity to say, see, look, this is what I meant. Nobody's going to look at it and realize that you've been pushed to your breaking point. I was close to making some bad decisions myself. It's just, you got to find a pathway through.
And you understand how people get that way. And then the conversation also comes up of violence. Like, we need to have violent protesters. That is the worst thing you could do for this movement, man. It is the absolute worst thing. Any little bit of progress that's been made, any little bit of connections, they're gone. They're completely gone, because that's what they painted us as in the first place. And going into these places that we went and finally gotten the conversations going, you have no idea how hard it was to fight off that stigma.
Well, and Eric, I think what everyone needs to understand is, and that's the precarious position you're in, is if you were to make a mistake, if you had a bad day and it was on camera or something, you're done. The people that do talk to you right now would just not even respond to you anymore. And
you do a million things right. You do one thing wrong, that's what you'll be remembered for.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's about the best way to put that. But man, dude, I enjoyed this so much. We need to do this again sometime. I think
we do, man. For anybody who's still hanging around, and I'd love to hear in the comments, or maybe post in the chat or in the comments of the videos, what did you guys think about this? What did you think about the multicast on both because we went live on what? Well, I know we went live on my channel, but what you did, Facebook, your YouTube channel, and something else?
Facebook, YouTube. I think we're live on Rumble. I just recently started a Rumble account as well, just in case the censorship comes and I needed a backup place to be. So
yeah, copy that.
But yeah, man, I think this was fun. And guys, thank you for being in here. Again, remember, this case was very, very important. And I hate the fact that it had to happen to a celebrity for people to finally start talking about it. And I hope it doesn't take it happening to a celebrity again. The fact that this trial was a conversation all around the world, and then we fight to get media for John Mast.
Yeah, I know.
That, man.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. And I was going to mention, I'll just mention this now. You need to find a way to see if you can get cameras in on that, because that I think that was one of the benefits to Johnny Depp, is them getting that televised. Now, he's obviously, that case is not going to get the amount of people, but there needs to be cameras in there. We can talk more about that offline, but anyways.
I'm definitely working on something, guys. I
good. Okay.
Who watched the update earlier? It was crazy, Duane, because I just did a live earlier telling everybody that the trial was coming up next month. It had already been moved back twice. It was supposed to be back in March. Now it got moved to July. We had just spent all morning getting our plans. I do a live saying, it's been a year and a half. I think sometimes when we see these cases, they wait to hope that dies down.
Yeah.
Right. All that public publicity and everything, they wait for it to die down. But I was explaining that no more than 30 minutes after I got off that live, I get a message saying they pushed it back to November 7th. So they're pushing it back again. That'd be almost 2 years. And for anybody that says, well, is he in jail? Yeah, he's in jail right now. But I want to explain the important part of this. Nothing will bring John back.
Yeah.
But that was closure for the family. It's never going to be the closure that's needed. But at least there is some type of closure with making sure this justice goes through. Justice delayed is justice denied. And right now,
Yeah,
justice is
absolutely.
being denied. And so um, we're going to try to keep the updates going on that case. And you know what? There's several cases like that's going on right now. I don't know if you know it, Duane. Did you see the Chad Reed murder that happened down in Texas that was shot by the boyfriend?
Yeah. And they said, yep, justifiable shoot. That's
Got away with
horrible.
it. He got away with it.
You know, I
And
mean, I never made a video about that because I have a tendency sometimes if I cover something and I can't make a positive takeaway out of it, I have a hard time wanting to cover it. And every time I try to look at that, I mean, there are some takeaways that it's like never put yourself into that situation. Do not step on their property. When someone's showing their ass to you, so to speak, don't, I mean, I know you want to, but I mean, there's so many things where it's like, the guy was goaded into a scenario that took his life. I mean, it's not right. It's effing horrible. I mean, and when that guy came out with the gun, I mean, he should have turned around and left. I understand he was mad. I mean, all of us have been. How many times have any of us been through a situation where the ex is like, well, I've decided that you can't, you're not going to get to see little Timmy, and you're like, F you. The court order says this. I'm here. We're not playing this. We got things to do. And it's like they're effing with you, and
I think
unfortunately, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think he had been denied in that situation, and happened many times, if I'm understanding correctly. And the boyfriend that shot him, that wasn't his house. That was somebody he was cheating with, because he was cheating on his wife by being over there. I mean, that whole
Well,
case was just screwed up. But I understand what you're saying. If you can again, we talk about the conflict of family court. Find ways to decrease the conflict and make sure you know where you're putting yourself into. And I think that's why
yeah,
John's situation is something I empathize with so much. John was ambushed. He had no idea. When he turned around, because he saw his ex's car and went to get the
yeah.
car ready for the kids to get in, when he turned around, that was it. There wasn't
All
no
he was
fight.
thinking about was he was going to get to see his kid. How long he hadn't seen his kids for months, right?
He hadn't seen his kids in a while. I know there was a couple of times he had seen them in between. I mean, there's so many twists in that story. To remember everything is kind of hard,
Yeah.
because case went down in North Dakota. And then at one point in time, when he was exonerated and proved that she was selling false, things, he was getting custody of the kids. So when they
Yeah.
ordered for him to get custody, she took off to Idaho, which is like 14 hours away. So there was times that John was driving 14 hours just to see the kids for a couple hours, and then driving 14 hours back. That's what he was going through just to be able to see his kids. And then on top of that, fighting the stigma and the false allegations, CPS. And I mean, here you are, you're awarded custody, and somebody can just go across state lines. There was many times where justice was denied. He
Oh
had
yeah.
video evidence that he didn't hit her, and the judge said they didn't have anything to play it with, so they're not going to put it in there. There should have been some consequences for a judge, if you want me to be
Yeah.
honest with you, that didn't allow evidence inside of court, because he took a
Well,
plea deal.
yeah.
He pled guilty to something he didn't do, because they dangle that little carrot over your head, right? If you'll just go ahead
Yeah.
and say you did it, you're going to get this, because look, man, you're going to be guilty. So that was another reason behind this step thing, man. Maybe now these guys
Yeah.
won't think they have to take that plea deal. Many people plead guilty to things they didn't do.
Yeah.
And
Well, because it's like, I mean, do I really want to go to prison? So I take this deal and it'll be less. And yeah, I mean, and it just sets a domino effect of bad things happening.
yeah.
So
All right,
man,
guys. So
yeah.
we could go at this probably 24 hours a day.
Yeah, we did
So,
2 hours and 20 minutes, I think, or almost, yeah, right at 2:20. So,
man,
hey, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. I personally appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation and got something out of it.
absolutely. We'll have to do this again. Guys, make sure to like, share, subscribe, both channels. We're all in this together, and I'm thankful to have friends like Duane. Like you said many times, these are the guys I get to go to off the screen to vent my own frustrations, and without them, it would be hard to make it through. So I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right, man. We'll see you guys.